Hey guys, so you ready for it? Today's July 27, 2024, 2:25 a.m. Central Time. I'm going to preface this video with this. Kamala Harris. If any of you guys have been paying attention to her teleprompted speeches she's had recently, I have not seen anything off the cuff with her though. So just keeping that in mind, because even her teleprompted speeches during this administration were really painful. How she was able to read what they all call the word salad and get it even accurate was actually pretty impressive. How she'd talk in circles. Now, she definitely did it when she was one-on-one, so, or talking to the press in general. So we'll see if she does that. But regardless, I said in the very beginning of this administration that Kamala Harris may overshadow Biden because she's very strong. I used to watch her in the Senate. Okay? Don't know anything about her prosecutorial past as a prosecutor. However, I watched Kamala in the Senate quite closely because she was actually on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is the main committee I always watch, besides obviously the House one too. But the Senate particular, I always focused in on the Judiciary Committee and the subcommittees. Well, she was on the normal Judiciary Committee and a few sub, but anyway. So she was a bulldog, and I said that in the beginning of this. She was a bulldog. Regardless of how you felt about Kamala Harris, even in her time in the Senate, okay? I disagree with her 100% on everything. Oh my God. And the stuff that she'd say in those hearings were so fucking priceless. She turned everything. It was her sitting next to Cory Booker, and I swear to God, those two would go back and forth to see who could up the other on seeing how racist they could call whatever subject they were dealing with racist. I mean, they literally tried to up themselves. It was ridiculous. They could be talking about public housing, and I remember something random that she said, which actually ended up coming up to be a thing during this administration, saying that public housing was racist because it didn't have enough trees and shrubbery around to, how did she say it? To lower the noise volume coming from the streets where most urban housing is located. It was like so painful. And then Cory Booker went off on some tangent as well. So, I mean, she'd bring back race to everything. It was really amusing, to be honest. It was like, do I continue recording this for my subs and stuff, or do I just turn it off while Kamala Harris and Cory Booker come on? But beside the point, she was good at what she did. She was excellent in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and she was excellent on the Senate floor speaking. Whatever happened to Kamala Harris on January 20th, 2021, and she lost her brains, I have no clue what happened other than they dumbed her down intentionally to make Biden look less retarded. That's the only thing I could think of. But even then, like, her staff turned over a bunch because apparently she has high standards, and she was like basically telling her staff off in front of other staff and like questioning them a million times. Well, guess what, guys? That's a prosecutor. So if you want her as a fucking president, have fun being a staff member there. Or a press secretary for her? Oh, God, hell no. So beside the point, Kamala Harris recently, since she was nominated, if you will, she isn't nominated yet, but been anointed the Democrats' presidential nominee, her speeches, teleprompted again, have been rather coherent. And I don't think anyone should take Kamala Harris, being the retard she has been for the last 3 years, as being the Kamala Harris to look forward to over this presidential election. Because I don't know, I really don't know. Like she spoke off the cuff in the Judiciary Committee and was perfectly fine. She'd speak off the cuff in the Senate, too, when, like, other senators would interrupt her kind of thing. And she was fine. So it's like, what the hell happened to you on January 20th, 2021? Don't know. Speechwriters, who would write some of the shit she said? Don't know. So regardless, nobody should take for granted that Kamala Harris, as dumb as she's been in the last 3 years that public have seen her, to not somehow be able to erase that and rebrand herself, which is what they're doing with the border czar situation, in the public like they are now, and try and erase all of that history of her being an absolute nut job and talking about school buses and what the hell else did she say? Something about a yellow school bus and like Venn diagrams, and like the fact she sat in front of a bunch of kids that turned out to be actors talking about the moon and the craters you could see. It was just, oh god, the whole thing about Kamala Harris during this entire administration has been fucking painful. Get ready for all of that to disappear as quickly as they can. And guess what? The Democrats got the memo, because all of the liberal media, Harris's campaign, all her surrogates, I mean, it's ridiculous. She was not the border czar. She was just supposed to deal with the root causes and all this shit. Well, I'm pulling up some articles to tell you the otherwise, that we're back in 2021. So we're going to do a time warp. But regardless of whether you called her the border czar or not, and the whole border czar terminology came back from during that time period in 2021 too, because they were calling like all kinds of different shit czars at the time. And I can't remember what else was dubbed that, but regardless, that's where that kind of came from. So the border czar came from that time period. Had they not been talking about czar regarding other topics, maybe she wouldn't have even been dubbed that, but beside the point. She failed. She failed at her job regarding immigration. And I'm going to actually show you the memo that comes out on the White House's website back then on what she truly, actually, literally failed at. Okay? What she was given and what she failed at. But before I get into that, I want to throw this out there, because she's talking about different shit that she wants to do now and blah, blah, blah. I want to point this out. This is actually in an article I brought up. Harris to lead administration's efforts to stem migration at the border. This came out March 24th, 2021, CBS News. The article really didn't have much in it that I wanted to talk about, but has this in it. During the early months of the administration, Harris has already signaled other foreign policy priorities. So keep in mind, this is the type of stuff that will be in her administration if she were to get there. God hope she doesn't, and save us all. In February, White House officials told CBS News that cybersecurity, technology, and global health would be among her top agenda items. Those close to Harris say the interests come in part from her days as California junior senator and her experience as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So keep those little things in mind as you see what she did during this administration, what she might be interested in the future that she may not say out loud. So anyway, this came from NBC News. Biden tasked Harris with stemming the migration on the southern border. And I have screenshot these things in case these disappear. But it says March 24th, 2021. It says Washington. President Joe Biden announced Wednesday that he has appointed Vice President Kamala Harris to lead efforts to stem migration across the U.S.-Mexico border as the administration faces growing political pressure to address a surge in undocumented migrant children unaccompanied by parents. Biden said during an immigration meeting at the White House that he had asked Harris to lead the administration's efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, countries that will, quote, need help stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border, end quote. A senior official said Harris's role would focus on two tracks, both curbing the current flow of migrants and implementing a long-term strategy that addresses the root causes of migration. Cabinet members, including Secretary of State, are expected to work closely with Harris on these issues. So yes, there were actually two parts to that. It wasn't just the root causes, but But even if it was just the root causes, she failed. She absolutely failed. I'm going to tell you exactly what she failed at, because I'm going to show you what the action the Biden-Harris administration has taken to address the border challenge that came out on June 15, 2021. Anyway, this was this is actually from the editor, but I thought this was pretty accurate. And also, if this wasn't her job to stem the flow, then why would he have said this too? It's kind of amusing as well. This came from BBC, March 24th, 2021. He said, if she succeeds, Harris diffuses an issue that the Republican Party, and Donald Trump in particular, has used as an effective political weapon against her party, earning the gratitude of influential immigration activists. If she fails, the ensuing political fallout could derail the Biden presidency and overshadow all its early accomplishments. Harris now has a chance to prove it and burnish any future presidential credentials along the way. So those future presidential credentials are being rewritten as we speak. So anyway, this was their... What is this? It's a statement and releases. Okay. Came from the briefing room at the White House. So the part that she's in, because it mentions a bunch of crap I'm not going to bother with, is enhanced migration management. And if you scroll down, it says, on her trip to Guatemala, the vice president announced a new human smuggling and trafficking task force that will identify, disrupt, and prevent migrant smuggling and human trafficking operations. Fail. On her trip to Mexico, the vice president announced that the U.S. and Mexican law enforcement agencies will partner to exchange information and take appropriate actions to address the shared priority of disabling human trafficking and human smuggling organizations. Fail. And then you move on, and she says, addressing the root causes of migration. Yes, I'm not debating. She absolutely was told to do that too, which she failed. On her trip to Guatemala, the vice president announced that the Department of Justice, with support from the Department of State, will create an anti-corruption task force that will include U.S. prosecutors and law enforcement experts to investigate, prosecute corruption cases within a nexus in the United States, Guatemala, and the region. On her trip to Guatemala, the vice president, not sure why they didn't put this into one paragraph, announced that U.S. aid and DFC will provide up to $48 million in U.S. government resources to advance economic opportunity in Guatemala through support for entrepreneurs and innovators, expanding access to affordable housing, agricultural businesses, and development of micro, small, and medium enterprises. And then it says on here, on her trip to Guatemala again, the vice president announced that USA Aid will provide up to $40 million over 3 years to launch the Young Women's Empowerment Initiative that will focus on creating opportunities for young, primarily indigenous women. I wonder if that opportunity had anything to do with helping get to the border with that $40 million, and how many of those indigenous women got raped on their way here because of that $40 million. Just putting it out there. On her trip to Mexico, the vice president witnessed the signing of an MOU between the United States and Mexico. This MOU establishes a partnership to address the lack of economic opportunities in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras by fostering agricultural development and youth empowerment programs in these countries to address the root causes of migration. So yes, of course Kamala Harris was supposed to address the root causes. Did she do it? Did it help stem the migration, as her boss Biden said? No, she failed. She failed fucking hard. She failed flat. Fell flat on her face. She sucked at her, whether you call it border czar or border job, border task, whatever you want to call it, okay? It doesn't matter. Kamala Harris failed, and failed hard. So this whole rebranding of Kamala Harris in the last week has been very amusing, to say the least. This is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.